plowed last week. Such a bitch to get it off the cloud onto the. But stuff happens. Okay, so I wish more people were here because we're going over the test. Maybe they'll show up. This weekend we're going to come here again. And for next Thursday's class, we're going to do material, which is you guys, which is week 12. So, and then there's I don't have a reading due, which is a mistake because there's chapter. It's the one after the indoor air quality. So chapter 15 in your text, read that for next week.
Chapter what? 15.
15. So where are we going Saturday?
Right here.
Okay.
What's that?
Oh, here's that. Yes, thank you. I know you guys working on the hurry, but if you can, make sure try to get here on time. See what's happening tonight. It's gonna take me 15 minutes to get this thing started. Yeah, no new handout, just the test. That's enough, right? So do you have your handout from last week?
Yeah.
So get that out, please. And we're meeting. Oh, you don't come on Saturday. Do you work every Saturday?
Yeah. It's about
You sure?
yeah, sure. I'm supervisor.
Okay. Okay.
Me too.
And then for next week, next Thursday, we're gonna do week 12 materials. And there's a chapter 15 in here to read.
Okay.
Okay, we're switching around a little bit because we're behind.
Thank you.
So nobody got a C, thanks to your teacher.
Thank you.
Some of you deserve to see.
Okay,
I tend to grade on a curve, but there's limits to a curve, you know.
a little curveball.
But it's your first test with me, so you know you weren't used to it. I more think it's the fact that some of you aren't very good test takers. And so I want to go over just for a few minutes some tips on taking tests for your final. So those of you who got A's and did really well and hardly missed any, I'm less talking to you than the other 3/4. Okay. You guys tend to be brief, and I think it's because carpenters are kind of brief people. You got to do the point and brief. They're not long-winded, which is actually a good sign. But you got to be long-winded enough for the teacher to know that you're answering the question. Okay. So sometimes I have to decipher your answer, and I'm pretty liberal with that. If I have any inkling that you're aiming at the answer, but you just couldn't get the words, I'll give you credit. So of course, sometimes I can't even read your writing, so that's good. But I would try to use full sentences or the completest description as you can, and be less abbreviated. They don't always call for like if I say three things, you can list 1, 2, 3 and not put a full sentence, but just fill it out a little bit more. Some of you are a little bit too brief. And I took points off for some of your briefness, and I tried to explain why. Also, here's a good tip. Try to figure out what the question's trying to ask you. I know that sounds funny because it's a question, but some of you guys give answers that are they're sort of correct in general, but they don't really address the issue in the question. You know what I mean? So, did I have an example here? Yeah, maybe question number 1. So what is the value of landscaping with native plants, right? So without getting too philosophical, the word value, why is it good? In other words, to plant with native plants. So it's something you gain from native plants. You gain plants that won't die right away, like the ones you buy at Home Depot, that aren't native, and you don't know anything about planting plants. They die right away, but of course you can take them back, get a new plant. But the value really is to save water, because saving water is a value to us, right? And a lot of you put saving water, so that was a good answer. And then of course, to make sure the plants live, that's obviously value because you're planting a plant. If you didn't care if it lived, you wouldn't even do it. So in order to, so the fact that they're already adapted to the ecosystem means that they'll probably live easier than if they weren't. So just keep in mind what you think the teacher's really trying to ask, okay? If I come across another one, I'll give you another example. For the second to last one on, and we'll go over it closer, but on why is the code phasing out gas, the possibility of using gas in a home. And some of you put I forget what you put, but you didn't put anything about greenhouse gas. It's funny you put the toxicity of using gas, which is a local thing that goes on in your kitchen. And actually, you need to take the test.
Yeah.
So why don't you go to room 24? Danny's already there. Yeah, take your time, you usually have the whole period, but when you're done, come back. Okay, sure. So that brings up another point. Seeing Gavin is I couldn't figure out why he didn't come, and I emailed him a bunch, never got an answer. Of course, I get pissed off when I don't get answers after the third email. And then I called him today, and I couldn't call him because my computer wouldn't give me access to your phone numbers. So I spent an hour with the tech guy figuring out why. I got that corrected. So then I got phone numbers and I called people. And he said, "Oh, I sent you a text that said I was sick with the flu all week." Well, so that's fine. He did what he was supposed to do. But send me an email, okay? I'm a little more old-fashioned than you guys. And I check because I get stuff from school. So I have to check my pipeline every day. So if you want to get a hold of me or respond there rather than to a text. Because I could actually get a lot of texts and I'll miss them when I go down. I'll miss your text if it's not. You know how texts are. You know how emails are sometimes highlighted, or you can kind of the title tells you what it's about. The text sometimes it's just a couple of simple words and you don't even know what it's about unless you go into it. So if you're reading down, you go, that couldn't mean much. And that could be one of you guys saying you're sick. So get a hold of me by email if you could, okay? I know it's natural because you guys text each other a lot, so, but I miss them easier, and that was a mistake, and it wasn't his fault. We're gonna go over a bunch of them because you guys missed a lot that you shouldn't have. Oh, and number 3, what makes topsoil healthy? I saw a Nova last night on how plants arose on planet Earth. Oh man, if you ever have access to Nova, I guess you can get Nova on different platforms, right? It's a PBS publication, but I think you can probably get on YouTube but look at this, they're doing a Planet Earth series, and this one was on the origin of plants. And plants are the whole key to everything, and that's what keeps us alive. You know, we don't just eat plants, but everything we eat eats plants. So without plants, we're not here. And the importance of fungi is unbelievable. And it went by billions of years. It said, well, first there was a planet with nothing but water. Then plate tectonics brought a little bit of land up. So then there's a little bit of land and water. And then another billion years went by. Billion years went by, and then somehow algae started. Probably in one of those hot volcanic, you know, where the plates meet, the hot air from the magma comes through sometimes, and the conditions are right. So once algae started, your exams on there. So once algae started, they were just in the ocean because it had everything it needed, and it couldn't go on land because there wasn't anything to get nutrients on land. So it took the establishment of dirt actually to do it. And but it just went through this whole process. Unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. So anyway, so then I look at your answers to what makes topsoil healthy. And they were, I mean, I gave almost everybody credit because you said 1 or 2 good things, but that's really an important thing. So, most of you said microorganisms or some kind of organism, which is true. They got to have that. And what invites that is enough water. But what disinvites that is artificial fertilizer and insecticides. So some people don't want insects to eat their plants. This is another reason for native plants. Over 1 million years, they figured out how to keep bugs off them, so they don't get eaten by bugs. But plants that aren't native are vulnerable. It's like Native Americans were vulnerable to smallpox when the Europeans came over. They had no immunity, just wiped them out. The same thing with plants. If you plant a plant that's new in a region, hasn't had time to adjust, the insects will just eat it wild. That's why most plants die, because they're not set. So when you talk about what makes topsoil healthy, you might think of what can bring it back to health also. A lot of what humans have to do is regenerate the earth because we really fucked it up pretty royally. And one of the things we can do is not use artificial fertilizer, which has too much nitrogen and phosphate in it, and it kills the organisms. The soil needs nitrogen and phosphorus, but not as much as in artificial fertilizers. And they tend to kill the organisms. So you have to keep fertilizing every year because there's no natural topsoil that would grow plants. So you're stuck on constant fertilizing, which constantly keeps the soil half dead. So same thing with insecticides. That kills all the organisms, but you want organisms other than the ones who eat your plants to live there. That's what makes them work. Come and get your exam up there. So how does water get into the roots of plants?
The roots. Soil?
How do they get to the roots? The roots are pretty far under, right? And it's dirt, it's soil. The holes, tunnels by the insects. So worms and a bunch of other insects, they constantly tunnel. That provides a pathway for the water to get to the roots. So this might be the last time I use this word in class. Man, it's not a dirty word, sorry. So it's a lot of our words in the English language and in Spanish and most European languages. A lot of the words come from Greek. True? I mean, yes, Greek and Latin are contribute to our vocabularies, whether you speak Spanish or English. So ecology happens to be a lot of scientific words are Greek roots because the Greeks started science first. So ecology, eco means oikos, which is home in Greece. And this is study, logi. Anthropology, the study of humans, anthro, right? Anytime you see logi, and most of our disciplines have L-O-G-Y at the end, it means the study of. So household, study of the household. So ecology is the study of the household of all the creatures on the planet, which are ecosystems, right? What's another word that's got echo in it?
System.
Ecosystem, which is related to that, of course. Economics, right? So what does eco mean in economics? Originally?
Home.
Household, home. And nomics means management of your household finances. So that's where we get economics. It's good to know that stuff. So the ecology, so the world, we could call it a biosphere. This is just too important to let go. So what does bio mean? Another Greek root.
Life.
Biology, life. Biology, study of life. Biosphere, the sphere of life. Why do they say biosphere rather than planet Earth? What's an advantage of saying that? Because planet Earth itself means dirt, right? That's where we get Earth. And that means when you say planet Earth, it means it's a rocky, earthy, maybe throw some oceans in. That's what it is, but it isn't. It's a biosphere. The evolution of the Earth was totally created by living things and their reaction to the dirt and the water and that. Without living things, it would be just like it was when it started. Nothing but water and a few rocky islands. So the whole development is because life started on it. So our planet is totally created by a combination of life and the sphere, the globe. So biosphere is actually a more descriptive term, and people are using it. Ecologists are using it more now because it tells more. So I'm big on something with bio in it. Bioregion. So that's the creation of a society, a region that's more based on biology than they usually are. Most of our cities and societies and civilizations really don't take too much care of the environment or the biology in the world. And we can't stop doing that. Look what we've done with global warming and toxins and everything else. So we have to take the biology, the biological world, the biosphere into consideration now. It's actually imperative. So I've written a couple of books on bioregion as a proposal for a way of having society and ultimately civilization that's much more easy on people and easy on the environment. It's nothing, I didn't create it. It's a tradition that started about 50 years ago, and I kind of added my 2 cents to it. I think it's local, it's small. It would be like South Santa Barbara County would be one bioregion, and we would control our politics, our government, our farming, our food production, our manufacturing, and we'd have control over it, so it wouldn't get out of hand. There wouldn't be a lot of middlemen making a lot of money. We could gauge the pollution because we're right here. That in other words, we're guarding our home, our oikos, our ecosystem. We're guarding it because we're the guardians of it. Right now, Washington, that's never going to work. So you should know that this country is never going to keep going like it did because it's too big. And there's between what you and I want in our world and what our representatives in Congress do, there's a mile of distraction within that distance. there's people, what do they call it when they,
Lobbyists?
what?
Lobbyists?
Yeah, there's people that lobby, all kinds of people that take what you and I want and turn it upside down, and then the congressmen get paid to vote for that. And so it won't work. It's gotta be on a small scale. So keep that in the future. If you ever hear the word bioregion, let it perk your ear up and pay attention to it. Because I think it's our only way out. Obviously, look at what's going on in the world. We're not making it in the old system. Okay. That's all I'm gonna say about that. It's related to this. Because how we treat our sites and our yards and our houses fits into this, whatever system we live by. Yeah? Okay. So the test. Okay. Most people got one, more or less. How can we deal now also? So here's a question. How many of you, and this is just a straightforward question, okay, don't get paranoid with it. How many of you think that how many of you have English as a second language? Oh, a number of you, yeah. How many of you think that that affects the way you read things in English?
Sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I suspect that. I mean, I've dealt with Hispanic students for 20 years. And I talk to them all the time and they say, yeah, of course. And I can tell some by your answers that you didn't quite understand the question. Now, it's not just restricted to second language people. Anybody can make those kind of mistakes. You
I
know,
asked Siri, but she didn't understand either.
yeah.
And she's white.
Yeah, I know. But I was just wanting to say, so, there's not a lot you can do about that, right? Except keep trying.
Yes.
Angel, is your native language Spanish? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Doesn't seem to bother you on the test.
Como lo que te que en second language y hablamos mejor de lo que
Okay, how can one deal with flooding from heavy rains in one's yard? So the emphasis was on yard. Some of you talked about collecting water on the gutters and off the roof. So that could apply to a yard because it goes off the roof and it floods the yard. So, so that was a good answer. And it's anything that slows water down or keeps it in your yard is one way to deal with it. So most of you got that pretty well. Gray water and edible plants. If you miss a question and my discussion doesn't cover, you still can't figure out why you got it wrong, just raise your hand and ask me, okay? In most of California, 6, we said that several times, gray water systems from laundry to garden can be installed without a permit. Only a few miss that. Everybody got 7 right, I think. Everybody got 8 right. That was good. Daylighting. Some of you put essentially using daylight. That could be standing out in the street and bathing in light and reading a book, standing up out in the street. So I was hoping you would connect it to inside a residence, which would bring in windows and things, which a lot of you did. So you see you're contrasting with electric light. So when you see a question like that. Oh, here's another thing. If I ask a question, what is something? That requires a definition. And although giving examples is a type of definition, Aristotle said that was a good definition. Teachers usually want a general abstract definition of something. So some of you just listed the ways light can come in a house. Like you said, what is daylighting? You said sonotubes, windows, now like there. But that's not really a definition. I probably gave you credit for it anyway. But I'm just telling you for the future and in general, teachers want a little more, you know, a little more of an answer, like with daylighting. Just contrast it with electric lights, you know, and then you know why, because what's wrong with electric lights?
We use power.
They use power, yeah. So during the day, why use it if you can use, you know, daylight? Yeah,
Is daylighting always indoors? Or can it refer to like exterior space?
no, it usually doesn't, like in a patio, it wouldn't refer to like a pergola or anything like that. Most of you got 10 right, we talked about that quite a bit. And that's related to the next question, yeah, 10, 11 are related. But a lot of you missed 11. Now, sometimes the way sentences are written in English are kind of tricky. So when I see someone miss that I think should have got it, I flag that and I look at the way all the rest of you answered it. And if everybody answered it wrong, then I think, well, maybe it was not written well. If just one of you missed it, then I think maybe you just didn't know the answer. Gray water. Gray water is not, don't define gray water by something you can use in a laundry. Get your exam there, in a laundry gray water system. Because before we had gray water systems, gray water was still the name for everything but black water. Black water is solid waste, yes. Gray water is everything else. Dual flush toilet, you said it has 2 flushes. Well, yeah, that's what dual flush means. So that's called repeating the question for an answer, and it's not really a good answer. So I took one off, and I usually wrote a note and said, yeah, but what are the 2 choices for? And a lot of you put in your best camouflage English, pee and poop, which is great, you know, euphemisms there. Some of you even said solid waste and liquid waste, which is really dainty. I love that. So, but you know, there's a reason for that. And so you sort of need to specify that. Same with composting toilet. So sometimes I get a pretty good laugh out of some of these, but a lot of you put, it allows you to create compost. You're not trying to make compost with a composting toilet. Because one, you can't use it on anything but ornamentals. It's like gray water, except it's worse. You can't use it even on trees. You shouldn't if you're going to eat the fruit. I mean, it could be composted so there's no pathogens in it if you do it right and everything was right. But if you don't do it right and it slips through, then it's still kind of toxic. A lot of people have a place where they put compost from a toilet and it composts even more, and then they can use it on their ornamentals. What you're basically doing by composting is, one, not being dependent on water. These things developed on places where there wasn't access to sewerage or plumbing, and there wasn't a water supply. So it didn't make any sense. You know, there was like outhouses were the first thing with that. You go to New England, there's outhouses everywhere because there's no water in the camps, or it's only seasonal. And so the outhouses are just holes in the ground. They're pretty much like composting toilets. So you're just trying to get rid of the feces. That's mainly it. And the fact that you can compost it and it won't be as offensive and you can throw it out somewhere is why you do it. It doesn't use water, and it also doesn't use water. It doesn't need plumbing, and it doesn't need water. And toilet flushing is a huge amount of water. Even when it's low flush, like we keep having to go down on our gallons per minute, it's still a lot. It's still a ton of water. And I mean, who knows how the drought's going to go and how the world climate's going to go. It's just doing crazy stuff. But in say 20 years, which is enough time, some places may be really horribly drought ridden, and they'll have to really ration their water. And so they'll be probably using composting toilets automatically, because that's a huge place to save water. You can't save the water you drink, obviously. And you need water for hygiene, right? To clean things. You know, that's a certain amount of that's pretty important. But after that, it kind of trails off. You don't need water for grass. If you don't have it, you don't need it for that. Energy Star label, I was hoping you'd put EPA or government because labels that certify things are only as good as the body that certifies them. I was pretty liberal on that, but everybody got engineered lumber. Good for you guys. Most people got 17. All those reasons are why less electricity is good. Oh, this one kills me. And 18.
Yeah, I got that wrong.
A lot of you got it wrong, and I think it's because you've never lived at a time when they had incandescent bulbs.
I mean, as a club, but I forgot, I think traditional, I think common and I was like LED.
Yeah.
So, like, he could-
See, in my life, I've lived through all that, so it makes sense. But most of you have only been alive when they had LED bulbs. I don't think it changed anybody's grade, especially on the bottom end, because I reached the curve down to cover you guys. So yeah, so all of you got B minuses, probably deserve C pluses on a normal scale, but I didn't want to bum you out. Because it's the first time you've taken my test, so I'm trying to get you to see how I want to answer next time for the final. So, but a B minus helps, it'll average better than a C plus on the next test. So now, here's a question for you. Some of you who got less grade than you wanted, I know all of you want A's. How many of you didn't want an A? You just want to do the best you could.
All day.
Okay. I mean, a lot of students just want A's. I mean, that's pretty natural. But some don't care. They just want to do well. They want to learn. So I could give you some of you like somebody who didn't get A's or A minuses, a chance to add a few points by rewriting the ones you got wrong, rewriting the answer in a way that I've been telling you about. What do you think? Anybody interested? If you're interested, come to me after class, okay? And we'll set something up just to give you because there's only 2 tests, so it's hard to, once you do a score, you can pull it up with the next one, but you got to do really good, pull it way up. But it would be interesting to me to see you answer in a fuller way. And that would be a good exercise for you if you're not doing that yet. Okay, so in an incandescent bulb, the light comes from a wire that resists electricity and heats up. So if you were alive a little bit longer than most of you, if you saw the word incandescent, you go, oh yeah, that's the old bulb. So that's another thing. Be aware of answers that might lend light on previous answers.
I'm gonna bring it. Will they give me a plan whether if I bring in a condensable bulb? Yeah.
I think you can still buy them.
I got the better clothes, don't worry about it, I'll bring you some.
No, I don't want to, but chicken coops use them, because they generate so much heat because they're full of it. And the little chickies need heat, right? Anybody here ever raised chickens? Come on, raise your hand. Yeah. They're great. Every animal that you raise, whether it's a sheep or a goat or a horse or a cow or a chicken, the greatest part of that experience is learning that they're not just stupid little animals. They've actually got personalities and they're kind of zany. That's worth it, raising animals, because to learn that, not just moving machines. Chickens are funny. I love them. They take dirt baths and they have pecking orders that they never. Okay. Number 21 was actually not worded that well, and you all got it right. So I don't know what happened. You read that one good. It was kind of entered it backwards. Okay, alternating current, I got alternate answers, but they were all right. Everybody got 25 and 26 right, and I think 27 and 28. 29, a few missed it, but most of you got the water collectors, solar ones on the roof are more efficient than solar electrical panels. If you have a solar electrical panel heating your water heater, it's just like you were heating your water heater with the house electricity, right? And that's expensive. You ask anybody that has electric.
Like, I was confused on like what you meant by efficiency, like energy efficiency versus like how efficient is it at heating water? So,
Oh, so you got it wrong?
I didn't get a point out, but I put false. And I think.
Yeah, okay. So that's something you can do. A lot of teachers don't like it, but I don't mind it, is if you're pretty sure the answer depends on something, on a few things, and it could go either way, write out what you're thinking. Some of you guys do it already. And I'll look at that and I'll go, yeah, you're right, that's fair. Or you could do it now, and that's fair. You don't need your grade raise, so. But yeah, I thought about that in another question about efficiency. But usually in building, efficiency means money savings or
Energy.
well, water savings. Usually it's water or money. Something can work more efficient. Well, if any machine works more efficiently, it means it's using less electricity, right? It's designed better if it's more efficient.
Well, but do that and like produce the same results would be like efficient.
Yeah. All right, well, let's see. So let's see if there's another one like that. I think I remember another one. Oh, 30 and 31. You guys, why does wind power need to be stored?
So they can be used at a later time.
No, but that's what storage is. That's another question as an answer. I look at that and I go, wait a second, haven't I seen that somewhere before? Oh yeah, that's the question. No, but the whole idea was it's intermittent. You know what intermittent means?
No.
Comes and goes. Intermittent means not constantly. It's on, goes off and on, off. Well, sun's that way because at nighttime, right? And the reason you need to know this is because the people that fight solar and wind, and I've never had a problem with being opinionated as a teacher. So I'm going to say they're idiots, because global warming is whipping our butt now, and it's going to whip it for the next 500 years unless we keep our greenhouse gases down. And solar and wind do that. So to criticize them without knowing what you're talking about offends me. Okay. So anyway, they'll say, well, yeah, it's not a good substitute for gas because it doesn't work full time. So wind and solar can work together because wind can be at night. A lot of times winds come at night in places. So they can complement each other, but also we have really good storage now. And so that's what the storage is for. So at night we can just take it from a battery. The batteries are getting better and better, the Tesla walls and all that stuff. We're working full time around the world in our science labs to improve the batteries. So that's not really it's not really a criticism, a decent criticism. If there wasn't anything wrong with the world, then you could say, yeah, okay, that's a problem with those energies because they're intermittent, but there really is a problem with our use of greenhouse gas. Name 2 ways of storing electricity. And most of you got that. The grid, if there is a grid. Well, in general, a grid and batteries. Now there's a ton of batteries. You could have listed different batteries if you wanted to, but grid and batteries was sufficient. Okay, 33. A lot of people miss that. Air quality contaminants consist only of toxic outgassing chemicals. And most of you who answered that true, I put a non outgassing chemicals. I listed some for you. Like mold, like combustion gases, rug mice. Rug mice aren't outgassing chemicals. Okay, 34. In a mile, okay, so every question has assumptions, right? And the assumptions go all the way to, well, I'm assuming everyone speaks English that's taking this test. So that's an irrelevant assumption, of course, you know. You're taking a class in English at a standard American city college. We don't need to list that assumption. So a teacher always has to pick what assumptions might be involved in a wrong answer and then has to list those. So in a mild climate like Santa Barbara, this is number 34, an impermeable air barrier like a polyethylene film is needed. So I'm assuming is needed means that your house will be too cold or you'll spend too much money on heat. So any of those, you won't do that if you don't put a plastic layer down. So it's not really needed. You need to keep warm and you need not spend money. Those are in that question, those are the needs, and it doesn't affect those. But if we were in another climate, and I said in a mild climate like Santa Barbara, but in other climates, you might need those. So I'm assuming, you know, we're assuming it's Santa Barbara. Okay, a few people got that wrong. I want you to get that right because, okay, so this is the point I was trying to make. I just remember. When you have a passive house or a house that's trying to be use zero energy or very little, most of us don't care about that. We just want a house that doesn't cost us a lot and is comfortable. But the fanatics come in and they want a passive house or net zero house. They may put a plastic vapor barrier to eke out every little bit of heat that might leave. But they would pay for that. They would pay extra and probably wouldn't pay back over any time. But they've got some fanatic reason. I don't mean bad fanatic reason. Maybe they're really concerned about global warming. And so they have the money to build a house that won't contribute to it. And so they'll do that. So that's another assumption, but those are odd assumptions. We're not going to deal with those. I used to have students that would say, well, yeah, but isn't that assuming? And they just take one of these obvious assumptions. And I'd say, well, yeah, but if I had to write down every assumption on this test, it would take me every question would take 2 pages. Thank God you guys aren't that thorny yet. Okay, Tyvek was 35 or house wrap. 36 was another oddly asked question, but fortunately, most of you got it right. It was fall. It's not impossible. We can make walls without convection. Loops. 37. I think if you said false on that, you probably weren't here when we did it that day. And when we talk about it, sometimes you'll miss 2 sessions and it'll be the only time we talk about, you know, insulation. So just know that the best thing is to pull it apart and put a little bit of insulation on either side, both sides of the wire or pipe or whatever. Stud bay insulation cannot prevent the thermal vision. That's true. Fiberglass bats and walls should touch all sticks. Everybody got that. Convection path, you guys tried. Everybody tried. I was pretty open to it. Okay, here's a good question where we talked about trying to figure out what the teacher wants, so what the question's asking. So when we talked about convection path, it was in a negative way, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't talk about it. Yeah. Who would care if they were there if it weren't causing a problem? So that's an assumption you need to make. Oh, convection path, that's not a good thing. And why? So a lot of you put it allows air to move, but you didn't say why that was a problem. So your answers sometimes didn't go far enough. They went to the first part. But that doesn't mean much for air to move unless it has a negative impact. And what is that negative impact?
And it affects the temperature inside, it make it cold or too hot.
Yeah, and yeah, that is one answer. What's the other? I mean, the other answer explains why, but that would do. What does that air do that's loose in a wall, that's not being trapped by insulation? Yeah, what's going on with the air, the convection air inside a wall? Because the insulation is leaving space for it to move. What's the problem with that?
It's rising up and it's very mold
Why is it going up?
because it's looking for a way out for, yeah.
No, why?
Because-
How does it look for a way out?
Down, right?
Yeah, it's warm, so it's attracted to cold. Heat's attracted to cold. That's a law of thermodynamics. Memorize that. So if there's a cold spot in that wall assembly, it'll go there. So if the insulation is allowing the air to get in front of it, it's not gonna go through the insulation, which is what keeps your house warm. When it goes through the insulation, it takes a long time, so backup air has to back up. So a lot of air doesn't leave your house in a hurry. It'll always leave. We're just trying to slow air down so we don't have to pay an arm and a leg to heat the house. It'll always leave, but we want to slow it down. It only slows down if it goes through insulation and gets caught in all those little air pockets. If it bypasses the insulation by going to a cold plate, and the cold plate is that top plate. Because if you look at a wall, the insulation, if that top plate's exposed to that convection path, it's gonna sense the colder than it is, and it's gonna go right to that top plate. When it gets in the top plate, it conducts out the top plate to the outside. It doesn't even go through the insulation. So and that conduction's faster through the wood than it would be through the insulation. So it's just taking a freeway out, which means it's not backing up the other, so it's keeping your house cool. You don't want to put a story that long, but say the convection path, but the best answer would be bypasses the insulation and hence doesn't keep your house warm. That would probably be enough. I want to explain that to you so you really get that. That's an important point. They found, I mean, the experiments they did and what they found with that poorly done insulation was just phenomenal. I mean, sometimes they would lose 3/4 of the insulation ability of that stud bay. That's like not having insulation. Not good, huh? So you want to know something else?
Yeah.
Of course you do. Almost break.
Oh,
If you had one stud bay, this is a thought exercise. If you had one stud bay that didn't have any insulation and all the rest were tightly insulated, where would the warm air in that room go? So if there's insulation on a wall and the insulation goes in, that whole cavity is still warm, right? Because that slow moving warm air is still in there. If there's nothing in there, what's that temperature of that bay gonna be? More like the outside, right? You think that would go through show through the sheetrock? It might.
It was,
I don't know, I'm just thinking. If it did show, then most of your air would tend to go to that bay. And then none of it would go through the insulation. That would really keep your house cold. So that's the worst case, and I'm not positive that would be true, but I'll do more research on it, look, but if it is, that's even more reason to. Okay, rigid foam. You can't, I mean, the question was best used, right? That's the key. Not where can it be used? Because it can be used anywhere. But where's the best place for it to be used? Now, what would best mean in that case?
Outside.
What would best mean? It wouldn't mean the size of the insulation because you're not comparing that, you're just comparing the rigid with, say, bats, fiberglass bats.
Oh, the higher R level or?
No, it wouldn't be that. That's not what we're asking,
Attic,
Like,
huh?
attic.
No, I mean, what would be the difference? If it's not R value, it's leakage, right? We just got to talking about convection leaks. If you cut rigid foam and use it in a stud bay, you're not gonna get a very straight cut. I mean, some of you might. You know, Manny might do a really good job because he's a
Yeah.
perfectionist. But a lot of us would just go, put it in because we're in a hurry. It's not gonna be as good as if you put fiberglass that's stapled, that'll fill out the bay more. So it's actually not. It's not best used inside a wall. A couple of you put that. It's best used where it doesn't have to be cut. So on the outside of a wall, you can use whole sheets and just butt them together, and you got two factory edges. They fit real nice. Sometimes you can even tape it. So that's a real good use, and then that's also stopping that thermal break. So outside walls probably the best use. Some of you put basements. Hey, who put basement for that answer?
Oh, me, my bad.
No, have you lived in a basement?
No. Garage.
I was just wondering if you'd been around basements and if you were from Boston, you totally know how to answer this question because they live in basements, they know how they're insulated. I said, who around here that has a basement? Somebody else answered that too.
We have basements that are dry.
You do.
Yeah.
So how do you think, have you ever watched the basement being built? How do they insulate it?
all under the
Spray foam.
floor guys.
No, on the walls of the basement.
Just an artist,
Oh,
just as.
normally they're just
They're just
left.
plywood. They're just hitting
Concrete, yeah, they're just left. If they wanna pay for it, they'll get first,
So how do you know that?
huh?
How do you know that?
How do I-
You've seen that?
I've seen it, yeah.
Yeah, ours is exposed too, where me and Julio work right there.
So one thing people could do is put rigid insulation against that concrete. That's what I thought you might have meant.
Yeah, I'm gonna take you for a blood filter.
Yeah, but some people actually put walls inside of the concrete, a 2x4 wall,
Yeah,
and then put insulation in and if you want a finished basement that's got sheetrock walls, that's what you do. It's extra money, but if you live in a place that's cold like New England, it's gonna be freezing down there unless you do something. So people build a wall, just waste the money for 3 or 4 walls there. But yeah, so it's best used on the outside. Another use is, who said floor systems? So before they had spray foam, which is really a great, if you have a crawl space, yes? And it's already floored, you've left the insulation to last, and they floored over the crawl space. Then you could go up with spray foam. And just spray those bays and it would create an air barrier and the insulation would be great. You'd have to have that crap fall on your face, which isn't good, but you'd have your hazmat suit on anyway, right? But you could put rigid hey, come and get your exam up here. Oh, yeah. You could get rigid insulation on the bottom of the floor, the first floor, right? Where the crawl space is. And it would stop any kind of thermal bridging, and that would be another use. Did anybody say crawl space for rigid insulation? Basement going once. There's another basement. Come on, fess up. Who did it? Could be somebody absent. There's people absent. All right. We're on Elias, we're on 42.
Oh.
Sorry, you didn't miss many, so it won't matter less to you. Why is craft paper back fiberglass insulation stapled to studs? Most of you got that. Some of you said doesn't move, which is true. The main way it moves is if it sags. Gravity will pull down insulation. So with insulation, whether it's backed or not, they consider it friction fit. That means it's touching the sides so much. It's not bent, but it's just such a good fit that the friction holds it up. So that may or may not be true. If you have seismic activity and the walls shape a little, that could let those sag. Because it would separate a little bit. If you had to cut the insulation because you had short bays, which you do all over the place, you might not cut it so it friction fits so well. So to alleviate all that problem, get the back stuff and staple it. Yeah. Okay, 43, everybody got that right. If you didn't get it right, and you're not too embarrassed to raise your hand, and you want to know why, you got to raise your hand. I mean, I may be wrong on my memory here. I mean, one positive and negative aspect of,
I get it right, but I get it. I think it was Marco, no?
no, everybody put weird answers here, but it's okay.
3 or 3 or 4, no?
Somebody put answers like why it's better to have bought solar, you know, the opposite, the one I'm comparing it to. But that's okay, that means you understood it one way or another, so I gave you credit. 45,
Oh, boy.
only a few missed it, but I want to make sure you get the concept. Due south, not even magnetic south, no, not magnetic south, real south is the absolute best facing position of solar, but that's 100% in that of that direction. But it's really hard if you got a house to always do that. You tend to want to put them parallel to your roof or whatever. So you can deviate from that. That's not written in stone. That's just 100%. If you're willing to put up with 90 or even 80%, 80%'s above 3/4. That's still a lot of sun. You can go all the way to halfway to east. You can go to south by southeast and south by southwest. That's what it's called. Yeah. And it still might be good. That's important to know because people give up on solar because the myth goes around, oh, if it's not facing due south, you're out of luck. We don't want that. We want solar panels everywhere. 46, 2 directions. I love this one. I got 46 and 30. 46 degrees and 30 is 2 directions. Don't you love that? And I couldn't mark it wrong because those are 2 directions. What I wanted was the azimuth angle or the horizontal angle and the tilt, the vertical line. So a lot of you got that right. I'm just saying some people put actual angles. Okay, okay, this was a bad question. Not a bad question, but it's more complicated than it looks. 47, what can cause pressure differences in a house? Some of you said holes, leakage. Oh, that's not totally true. When you have a leakage, the air in the house will tend to equalize with the outhouse, so it'll have movement. So it's not really, the holes aren't really causing the pressure, they're actually alleviating the pressure. When you fan something out, that's leaking, but you're accelerating, you're really doing it fast, right? So that's really creating the pressure difference there. So I'd say technically, there's some with leaks, but it's more like what do we call ventilation of various types. What did others put? Some of you got it right. Stack effect is what? You have a stack of money, which way is it going? Stack, keep stacking up. Stack effect means,
Hopefully not down.
yeah, really. So hot air rises, right? So if you have warm air in your house, it's going to tend to go up. Stack effect, convection. What happens when it goes up? What's down? What's under it? Nothing at first, right? Then colder air comes in and fills under it. So that can cause some pressure differences that way. So stack effect, wind effect, the wind blows into your house, creates a lot of pressure, and then the pressure forces out the other side. So it's only temporary, but it does change the pressure. And then fireplaces, which are not such a big deal because we don't have them anymore. We're not allowed to have them, or we have to have special ones. And that's the same thing, that the air goes up through there like an exhaust. You know, when a fireplace goes, that's really shooting out the exhaust, and it's depressurizing that living room pretty quickly. The reason you don't feel it is because most houses are so leaky, the air comes back in pretty quick. It feels like it always did. Everybody got the 48, the condensation in the wall. Okay, what's liquid changes. What's evaporation?
Well, liquid to gas.
Yeah, so there's three phases in most, with many materials, right? The solid phase, the liquid phase, and the gas phase. So, liquid's already in the liquid phase, but if it's heated, it'll evaporate into the gas phase, turning to gas. If it's a gas, it can condense back into liquid. And that's the problem in walls, condensation, condenses. So try to get those words. Those are just good words to know anyway. Okay, why does the new number 49 California Building Code require only electric power? The real reason that California is doing it, because I've heard enough discussion, is to combat global warming. Because when you burn gas in a home, you emit greenhouse gases and when you combust things. And that contributes to global warming. Electricity doesn't, unless it's made from a power company that burns coal or fossil fuel, and then that goes up in the thing. But we're getting so much solar, even commercial solar energy and hydro. What's that called? Hydro. Elias, what's the energy when they move water? They just call it hydropower. Hydropower for like rivers. But you know, they move when they pump something.
Like a pump hydropower?
Yeah, I think you have the name for that.
Oh, let me see. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, it doesn't matter.
I don't remember that right now.
Okay, so blower door. So some of you wrote the same thing twice.
Oh, yeah, PSA.
Huh?
Pump storage hydropower.
Yeah.
Yeah, PSA.
Which is a strategy to cool the teacher, and sometimes it works. So I read each one carefully. So what are the three things blower door does? Now, some of you put tested ducts. A blower door is a door with a fan on it. The ducts have their own fan, but it's not called a blower door. So the concept's similar, but it's not actually a blower door. Some of you put that, and I didn't give you credit. So what are the three things, Manny? No, William. What are the three things a blower door does?
Oh, you knew I just put one thing. Leak. It determines the.
It does what?
It finds leaks.
It finds leaks, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, that's one.
determines air changes. And the
Yes.
ventilation requirements,
And what?
the ventilation requirements.
Yeah. I separated those and those are okay. Those are actually similar, those last two, right? Because because the amount of ventilation determines whether it passes the. But we look for the amount of leakage to classify the house and see how much we have to patch it up. So that's, even though that's the same thing as finding ventilation for the minimum requirement, they're actually different concepts. So yeah, those are the three. See, you got it. I knew you'd get it.
Sometimes
Okay, let's take a break. You babies.
I like when we take a leg, man.
15 minutes and be back or be square. Be back or be splat. Who has Timmy's Saturday class tomorrow? Oh, you're so lucky. Guess who the teacher's gonna be?
What happened to Tim?
I don't know, he's gone through, but I spent an hour with him today going over what you guys are doing. Good God. I think it's great. He's doing a perfect job. But he had to explain everything he's been doing for the last month.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah, he told us.
He told you.
Yeah.
Everybody goes. I'll be easy on you guys.
What did you guys do last Saturday? I was able to.
It was an abortion.
An abortion? Oh my.
Well, there weren't a lot of people, so I didn't want to give parts of the lesson. We were gonna just do the lesson we didn't do the week before. And I didn't want to give certain parts of it because I thought they were important and needed a whole class audience. So I kind of picked and choose, which is not easy when it's on the spot.
Right.
I didn't know how many would come, but the attendance was so small that I just had to pick and choose, so
Yeah.
it wasn't fun. I had to work too hard. But we're getting behind, it doesn't matter. So we're gonna do that tonight, like, and then, oh, the other thing was people didn't bring their,
Oh, they thought there was like a, yeah,
like a free class. And they didn't bring these, so I was gonna go over these in detail, and when they didn't have them, that was what the big thing was.
oh, I see,
So I had to kind of fake it,
okay,
and so we'll do that, we'll go over this tonight,
okay,
and then this Saturday, we're gonna meet. And we'll go over some more of this that we're not gonna get done tonight, I didn't realize this would take so long.
oh, yeah.
I gave them tips on test taking. Cause a lot of it is just poor test taking skills,
Yeah,
and that took some time,
makes sense, yeah,
yeah, but it's good, they need to know that stuff.
oh, sure,
I
yeah,
mean, the answers, when you teach, especially when you teach the same class for a number of years. Just the answers are comical sometimes, but you know all the things students use to kind of bluff their way.
yeah,
Instead of just saying, I don't know the answers, or leaving it blank. They'll come up with some,
right. I mean, at least they're trying.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure I did that too, so I can't really blame them.
True. Yeah, currently I'm working in Santa Monica. Finishing up a project that is taking way too long,
Hmm.
and so it's always hard to get down here, that's why I'm an hour late today, because it was just horrible traffic.
Well, the timing was perfect because you didn't need much feedback on the test.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, with some of the questions now that I was reading, I was like, what was I thinking? Right.
Well, we talked about, and you would have been one of them, we talked about second language people. So German was your first language?
Yeah,
So we have I asked how many people were second language, and about 6 or 7 Hispanics raised their hand. And you would have raised yours if you were here. And I said, do you think that affects the way you read questions? And they said, yeah,
for sure, yeah.
I mean, because there's subtleties in questions, right?
Yeah.
And I try to be straightforward, but sometimes the questions are negative, they're set up in a way that's not friendly to a person who didn't
Yeah.
have great English skills.
Yeah.
Did you do it? Oh, you got there? Oh, great.
Where everybody go?
It's break.
Great.
Yeah, so half past, so. Till half past. So, who else was gonna take that test? Oh, Landon, what the heck?
Who's
I'm
that?
not here today, right?
No, but after last week, after Saturday, he said, I came last Thursday and I had to leave early or something, he didn't take the test. So I gave him the test, I said, do it at home and send it to me by Sunday, he said, by Sunday, he said, I'll have it to you over the weekend. So I didn't hear from him at all, I called him, his phone is, what I hate is when their phone storage is full.
Yeah.
So you can't leave a message.
Yeah.
I said, well, I'll nail him when he comes to class, and then he doesn't come to class.
Yeah.
But we have when you teach a class, they have a pipeline Excel sheet with all the students'
Mhm.
names and phone numbers. And school pipeline emails and their private emails, so we can get a hold of them,
Right.
And I couldn't, mine hasn't worked since this class. I push the usual button, it says that you go to this management things, class management, and then you press the Excel spreadsheet button, and it didn't go anywhere.
Oh,
And so I couldn't call a couple of these guys that have been Slack. And I
Right.
send them emails and they don't answer their emails. So I called the tech guy today and I said, what's going on? So over the phone, we painfully walked through this. And what happened was it sent mine to the document thing, or not document, is that what it is, document or?
like the Google Drive or something like that?
No, it's part of your
Oh, yeah.
storage, it's like documents, whatever. But before it used to come right on, like I'd
Yeah.
click it and it would just show up, the spreadsheet would just show up.
Oh,
So I thought it was just broken. And then I noticed that it actually did have a circle, But only for a second, I said, well, that's not very long, that's probably not it, but when I mentioned it to him, he said, oh, yeah, it's going somewhere.
Yeah,
So I looked at the documents and there were like 5 or 6 of them because I.
so many times, yeah.
Oh,
Makes sense.
just, that's my day, you know,
Yeah.
and I don't know what changed, and I said, don't worry, he was trying to figure it out, I said, don't worry about it, we fixed it.
Yeah,
But that stuff goes on at school all the time, systems, there'll be different one semester to the next,
right,
something won't quite work. Drives me freaking nuts,
yeah,
because, you know, if it was one of you guys that were pretty good at tech, you just know about where to look. And you just troubleshoot for a few minutes and get it, but I don't have that skill, I don't know where I would look,
yeah, yeah,
so I have to call a tech guy,
yeah,
and they're never around. They work from home, maybe they'll answer.
yeah,
This guy is pretty good, Alan, what's his last name? He's helped me a lot. He came here once, this computer, somebody had just rearranged everything during the summer.
oh,
And I couldn't, and he came, we just went through it and, you know, zeroed out everything. That was really good. I never could have done it.
yeah. Do you by any chance know, in Ventura, do they have any special requirement that you only have 10% of a wall, dedicated to window space?
School class,
Yeah.
that was just like an extra credit.
Is that
10%?
10% of the wall is allowed to be window space? I've never heard that before, and
But when we have, when we have the unit, it's not, you have that
Sorry.
handout, the,
yes.
it's in that one.
Yeah, but is that?
It's a national code, I think.
You know, we're right, but is it really only 10%?
I think it's more, but I wanna look at that to make sure.
Right.
I think it's more. That doesn't sound like.
Like, new houses, they have way more than 10%.
Well. Yeah, you can do that, but you have to do a special package. Like passive solar, you'd have to make sure you had the thermal mass, and HERS radar would have to come in and check that.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you can do it, but it's an exception, then you have to go through that whole. So 7 to 12% of floor area. So it sounds like that's nationally varied, so 10% could be.
Yeah.
Oh, great, okay.
Appreciate you letting me make that up.
Yeah, so we're taking a break till past,
Okay,
and then we'll start in again.
perfect.
Oh, yeah, no problem. And sorry about the thing, you know, I probably told the class, because you came in late, right?
Yeah,
Or did you go, oh, you were,
I was like 10 minutes behind.
no, but I mean, did you attend the first classes?
No, I missed,
Yeah.
I joined the class.
Yeah, so the first class I usually, and what I told them tonight, because of you, is to try to email me.
Yeah, I didn't have your email, I just said.
I know, but you have it now?
Oh, yeah, I have it now in my email.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Foster at SBCC or the pipeline one.
Yeah, perfect.
PM Foster, yeah. Because
Appreciate
I have to read those because I get stuff from school,
Yeah,
so I always read those every day.
all right,
Twice a day, but my text, and when I look back at your text where it was,
yeah,
you know, the text, they only put like the first 5 words and then that's it.
yeah,
And there wasn't anything to distinguish it.
yeah,
And I probably just thought it was,
Like
I
the
get a lot of
first
bullshit
sentence,
text. I
yeah.
thought it was probably just someone trying to,
yeah.
Sell me
yeah.
something.
Appreciate
So,
you letting me know.
yeah.
that, though.
yeah, that's no problem.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 7 to 12.
It's 12% from the square footage?
Yeah, 7 to 12% of floor area.
Okay,
Oh, you're talking about percentage of wall.
like, yeah.
Well, say you had a 10 by 10 room. So you had that's 100, and 10% of 100 would be 10 square feet.
Yeah,
So if you had a 10 by 10 room, you could only have 3 by 3 window.
yeah, it's-
That doesn't make sense, does
doesn't
it?
make sense whatsoever, that's why I'm like. That's right.
Well, but no, but that's 10% of floor area. So if the floor area was bigger than the wall area,
Yeah, the other question, like, was to me, like.
was it of the wall area, 10%
Yeah,
of
the
the
wall
wall?
area, like I went to the building department today in Ventura for a project that I might do, but. And they were like, yeah, 10% of the wall area, and I've never heard of that, and I'm like, that can't be right.
But this said 7 to 12% of floor area, but floor area could be.
Oh, you finished.
Could be a giant, room, right?
Right.
in a lump of, he's gonna drive back home, but I'm gonna go with him.
Cause you can't, oh, cause you came with them?
No, I drove my own car, but I'm gonna go with him.
Why?
What do you mean?
You going home with him?
Yeah,
Do you
we're-
live up there too?
No, I'm going to his house.
Oh, you're gonna stay at his house? Oh, okay. All right,
I'll see you on Saturday, but.
okay.
Yeah, I. No, it's again.
Good one.
Good, man.
Hey, I know college class is gonna be torture. I've gone to more school than I ever want to admit. But sometimes you just gotta bite the bullet and do it, you know?
Yes, sir.
So who has Timmy tomorrow? Saturday? Just a few, you do? In the morning?
Yeah.
No, Saturday, not tomorrow, Saturday. Yeah, I'm gonna be doing that class.
Oh, you're gonna be?
And he told me how to put the screws to all you guys too.
Yeah.
I like what he's doing,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah, so this is on passive solar, so it's gonna take the approach of the floor.
Right, but
Because that's where the math
but like
is.
passive solar is not necessarily code, right?
No, well, it's code.
I mean, it's like code, like if you wanna, like, if you wanna register it as a passive solar.
Well, I think I think the solar glazing has to be 7 to 12% of the floor area. I think somewhere in there is the code. It probably varies from city to city or state to state, but I think that's just the floor area. So that will be
But yeah,
the percentage will be higher in a,
like, kind of makes, well,
I don't know, no, it'd be lower in a what, just covering the wall.
yeah.
Because the walls, no, I don't know. Could be
I mean,
changed.
so
I
that
can't
would
say.
be, let's see, the room that I'm thinking about is 600 square feet, so that'll be 60 square foot of windows maximum, let's say 10%. Yeah.
So the wall is 60 square feet?
Yeah. So the whole, like, the room is 600 square feet.
The floor area?
Yeah, the floor area.
Oh, okay. So 10% of that is
There's no
like 60.
60 square feet.
That's a pretty good sized window, right?
Yes, but the thing is.
Well,
like,
no, not really, because 600 square feet is what, by what? What's that? What's the wall itself?
I would have to look at the plans, but like.
Probably
600 would be a 10-foot wall by a 6-foot wall, that's 600 square feet.
Yeah.
Like, 10-foot wall and 6-foot wall, yeah.
No, this is 60.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's more like 30, no, 20, 27 by 27.
yeah, something like that, yeah.
Okay, so if you had it, so if you just did the wall, say it's 27 feet by 8, what's that?
See,
220,
yeah, what's 27 by 8?
so that would be 22 square feet, so that's quite a bit less. Than if you take, you know,
Yeah,
22 square feet, well,
that would be 2 square feet.
if you, 27 square feet could be a 6 by 4. Like one big 4 by 6 window would just be under that,
Right.
so that's for, no, 27 for a wall though, that's not very much, huh?
Right, it's not a lot.
Yeah,
It's like,
no, that doesn't
it
seem right.
it doesn't seem right to me.
Yeah,
I mean, the thing is, like, with Ventura, they just hate ADUs.
well, yeah, well, it's an ADU, maybe they have a different qualification there too.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
You know, because
but like, you
they
can't,
may be worried about the comfort and the ventilation in an ADU. The insulation,
but like, the more windows, the more opportunity you have to ventilate, right?
well,
And also, I think, isn't there a
but
requirement?
they'd be colder too, windows would make it harder to heat. I don't know,
If you have just regular house insulation, like. You know, more, but like, if it's insulate the wall from the ceiling, it shouldn't be a problem.
yeah, no.
Yeah.
Well, you should just call Santa Barbara. Are you going back there tomorrow? Santa Monica?
Yeah.
Call Santa Barbara,
Yeah.
Or you can-
They're horrible.
huh?
It's right.
Call them always call them anonymously,
Yeah,
never let them know what you're doing.
yeah, oh, yeah,
Cause they'll haunt your life.
yeah.
I call all the time and say, yeah, a friend of mine's working in a thing and he asked me to find out if 10% is really the
Yeah.
constraint on a wall window ratio, come on, be great.
Yeah. Yeah, it is just ridiculous.
So we're not gonna get through a lot.
And even on a low bearing wall, you could, like, as long as you put the correct header in and like you should be able to put in a window, right?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's low bearing or not low bearing.
right,
Yeah.
right.
And it's,
Yeah, and besides, ADAs are usually confining, right, because they're smaller.
Yeah,
So you want to let the outside in all you can, if
Right.
there's a decent outside and there's sunlight.
Oh, also.
yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
Just-
Yeah,
I
I know, they have, I'm helping a guy convert his garage to an ADA. And it's already been an ADA, but he's expanding more into the garage. Not a lot of work, just moving a few walls,
Yeah,
but the stuff I had to do, I had to do a whole energy breakdown. They have a whole form, takes about 2 hours. You gotta look up stuff, you gotta call, find out about window stuff. And then you get there panicked about the amount of living space in town, and they make it impossible.
yeah. You have a experience, like, about drains, how it's basically like how a drain, kind of like a rat's tail, where it's like, kind of need to have it at a slope.
Yeah,
You think you can extend it by like at the end by another like 6 feet, when you have enough, it's up or not?
would it be straight? It would be straight at the end.
More or less, yeah.
Well, I don't know, it's got a lot of momentum, so, right?
Yeah,
So it probably, most of it probably goes in. Some of it might stay because,
right.
and I don't know if that's a problem.
I mean, like, yeah, that's the other thing, like, it's a slab floor.
You can put a pump in it too, though, right?
Right,
It might work, but
yeah.
when you can't get any other possibility, that's what we're gonna do.
Yeah,
It's not the end of the world,
right, it's another thing that breaks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we all back? Sort of? Okay, you got your handout? I know Ethan couldn't find his, but that's okay.
Oh, look, I have a podcast with a stack of not.
So Julio, do you have yours? Your handout? You're looking for it? Do you? You think you do? Can you share with Ethan if you find it? If you don't, we'll reconfigure. Okay, everybody got their handout out? Yeah. So we're gonna do the first one, it says timeline. So. So you won't have a handout, right?
Oh, is it?
No. No, I did have extra, but they got taken up. So maybe, Dennis, do you have that handout? Which one is it? Yeah. So you guys can share that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll give you one in the meantime. Oh, so listen. The final. The final exam is tomorrow.
Oh, nice.
No. We don't go to class on Friday usually. The final exam is not cumulative, so it starts from tonight. You don't have to worry about having the handouts except for the one tonight. Which I'll get to, I'll have some more next week for you. But remember, we're gonna prep for that test also. So don't worry about it if you don't have the handout quite yet. I'll. Let me know who doesn't have this one tonight. I know Ethan can't find his and Gavin and. Okay, so I'll get 5 or 6 and I'll have them next. On Saturday and next week also, okay? You bad people. Okay. So look at this first timeline. So 1970. We went over a little bit of this on the weekend, but I didn't have a timeline, so I just guessed it. US EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. Can you believe we didn't have one till 1970? Now, 1970 to you guys may seem like ancient history, but I was actually your age. Yeah, I was your age at that time. So, but that is an ancient history. That's relatively recent. And good old President Nixon launched it. So the talking in the background needs to stop. Okay. $1992. It's 22 years after the EPA, right? Look down there, the EPA and the US Department of Energy launched the Energy Star program. So we just became concerned about energy efficiency in 1992. Anybody here born in 1992?
90, right here. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Couple of you. Yay.
33.
Okay, so the first local green building program, 1992 also. So this is like 23 and 10. This is like 30 years ago. It's not very long. The US, I can never memorize this, the US GPC, United States Green Building Council. So it's a green building council, so it's dedicated green building, launched the LEED program, Leadership, Energy and Environmental Design. 1998. And then LEED version 2. Fluffy, supervise those guys for me, will you? So the LEED version 2 was 2000. That was the residential version. So we didn't even have residential LEED until 2000. So a few more of you were born by then, right? Anything else on here worth that? It gives you just a little bit of an idea. Flavie, when you're made manager, you get the crap from then on, right? Not who you manage. You know how it works. You know how it works. Okay, so if you want to read more about these different programs, I'm only going to discuss some of them. Energy Star, we've talked about enough, except if you go to the page that says Energy Star, which I want you all to do. So Energy Star, we think of it as a label on appliances, which is actually a later function. Originally, it was a home certification program like LEED and Bill Green and some of the other programs we're going to do tonight. It was the only one for a long time. But look at its list: effective insulation, high performance windows, tight construction and ducts, efficient heating and cooling, energy products, similar to the categories in all the programs we've been studying. So that was good. That was a government program, and government programs aren't always good. That one happened to be. Now they just made the standards, right? The bureaucratic program, there's a bunch of people sitting around thinking, okay, what kind of standards, sustainable standards do we have? But then if there were standards that people could achieve in a building, someone had to be on the ground to certify it, right? To make sure they weren't cheating. So then we needed a whole nother wing of people to verify that they were using these standards. Because if you're enrolled in an Energy Star program, that means you satisfy the requirements. There's several levels. And then you can tell the client, yeah, this is an Energy Star home. You should pay the money we're asking for it because it's really much better functioning home. But if it's all bullshit and it's not really true, doesn't mean much, so they have to have people that verify it. So if you look on the page across from that. It says, new homes are Energy Star certified through the Home Energy Rating System, HERS, HERS. So they developed that to certify Energy Star homes. But since they were the main group that trained people to do that, now they certify any program. They're just kind of an independent group of people that goes on site. There's a design wing to help you design more stuff. They'll go on site and verify that you have it, write it up, and then you turn it in when you get your permit or when you're trying to get occupancy. Okay. Now go to this page here. There's not much on it, it's just text. It says, directory of lead certified projects on the top. Green, and then it says professional accreditation. Green building professionals can become lead accredited. This accreditation enables an individual to facilitate the rating of buildings with the various LEED system. So LEED has become the major commercial residential development green certifier. So their standards are more than the code. You know, the code's always the bottom denominator because, you know, we can't make people go by standards that cost more money. It would be unequitable. It wouldn't be just in this country. So we have the regular code standards and then we supplement it. So if you have the money or access, you can get higher things. You have to pay for it. So green's been the main one, but we're going to look at one. I don't know if we'll get into it tonight. We're running behind, but at least Saturday, a newer program. We talked about it for those who came last Saturday, and I'll mention it tonight. Go to this page here. Got the guy who looks like George on Seinfeld in the picture. Anybody watch Seinfeld?
Yeah.
Freaking funny show. Doesn't it look like George?
Yeah.
Mr. Frequently Asked Questions. So on the other page is ResNet. That's the parent company to HERS. In case you ever want to know that. And then there's Building Performance Institute, which we'll talk about later also. That's another certification of green building. That one's pretty good. I went through their training at one point. I was trying to learn about it. But then that page with George on it has HERS ratings. Tells what they do. Reasons for HERS rating: builders to certify any house using Energy Star, mortgages. Sometimes they'll give you a mortgage, a better rate if it's an energy efficient house. That means a lot, right? Mortgages aren't cheap. It helps homeowners make informed remodeling decisions, you know, about how to make their house more sustainable. So that tells what the HERS raters do. And they have in the next page, this right here. It's a big handout, but we go through it fast, right? And that's just for some of you. So there may be people in this class. So if I were to send a survey out to this class in 20 years, how many, say there's 20 here, there's 20 enrolled, there's not 20 here. How many of those 20 do you think would be in the building professions, either as a carpenter or in an office, you know, doing blueprints or owning a construction business? What percentage of 20 people? Take a guess.
5.
5? Yeah. That's probably pretty reasonable. Some of you are already, how many of you are already in the construction business? So there's more than 5 of you. But of those people, some of you don't think that'll necessarily be where you end up in life, right? Is that right?
Hopefully.
Well, not hopefully. You can make good money as a carpenter, but if that's not your favorite thing, yeah, you want to know. But one thing that counselors in junior high, did you ever get counseled in junior high and high school about careers? They still do that? when I was in junior high, they put me in a room with a whole wall of books on careers, and they said, here, spend an hour in there and find out what you want to be. That's good counseling, you know?
They give us quizzes now, online.
So it's really, yeah, online, I guess, it's really important. They have tests you can take to see what you're suited for. It's really important, unless you have an in, like your parents or a contractor or do something and they can get you in, that's a good way to go, because you already got a lead. But if you're just starting from scratch and you don't know what you want to be, it's probably good to do some research and see to match up your personality and your skills to various careers, you know, rather than waste. I never do that. I wasted a lot of time. I'd go into that, that's not good. Go into that for 5 years, that's not good. But anyway, this page tells, not this first page, but this is for people who want to go into this kind of green certifying aspect of construction. So if you like playing with computers, how many of you are pretty good and like to fool around with computers? Yeah, some of you. So if you become a carpenter and go through that, you're not going to be able to use much computer work until you get into an office later on. Then you're a builder himself, and the people who do the bids and stuff probably use computer programs, but you may not get to there for 10 or 15 years. But if you really want to do something with computers also, this stuff is a combination of building and computer work. So I put these in here for those people who like computer work and don't necessarily care about being out in the field building stuff, but would just as soon do kind of this kind of computer and math work around building. These are opportunities for you guys, okay? So this first page just shows legal functions. So the state requires for the different kinds of certification and on the site verification, the state requires you to have certain certificates. So this tells you what certificates are required for what legal functions. It's gotten to that now. In the old days, you just did whatever you knew how to do. Now it's all because they don't want you doing something that's beyond what you trained for, right? Then you could get sued and it could be a mess. So the government stepped in and created these. So if you go to the next page, it looks like that same one. It's a couple pages down. It says summary of training required for the 5 levels of California State Certified Building Energy Efficiency Professional. Wow, that's a mouthful. See, you go to a party, says, well, what do you do? Well, I'm a certified California State Certified Building Energy Efficiency Professional. Why? What do you do? Oh, I work at a gas station. So, but that combines a lot of these things. It combines building because you have to know how building works. But it also has a lot of when we look at the building performance equipment on a couple of weekends from now, you'll see a lot of the technology that's used. You might be interested in working with that as well as just construction stuff. So that tells you what training requirements are required. It's not really much. I was looking through it. You know, leads, like you can take like a 6-month class. You know, and that's not every day. It's like one on a weekend, you know. And none of this training is actually that prohibitive. I was surprised. So that's good, right? Because you don't want to do something that costs a lot of money and takes forever to do. So look through that if you're interested in that. Otherwise, don't worry about that. The next page, go to BPI, Building Performance Institute. Elias, are you looking at this stuff? So yeah, we'll look at it more, okay? This is another one of those companies that got in early on, maybe 20 years ago, and they specialize in not only sustainability, but in combustion analysis. So they go into homes that use gas, which used to be all the homes. Now it's going to be less. And they would see if your gas appliances were combusting safely. So that's a really important thing. No other group does that. They just went off on that as a tangent. So go to the next page on that. The BPI. Envelope field guide, you see that? So they have several different categories. Yes,
¿Clase de inglés? ¿Son clases de
No, yo creo, esa es de construcción, pero ahora hay una.
inglés? Es que me flipa.
Sí, no, I think you're here, no? I have no idea, bro. Oh, good.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm good. No creo que-
a lot of, a lot of, language training and classes, aimed at Hispanic
Like-
students. Take place in this room, so people come here, thinking everything's here. So look at this stuff that they do, health and safety. So these are sustainable, this is a sustainability checklist. Why would health and safety be on there? Well, this company's made that a part of sustainability. And in a way, if you die in your house because it's toxic, you're not sustaining yourself, right? The basic sustainability is you have to survive your house. So they look at foundation basement moisture issues, so people don't get sick from mold. They identify indoor air. They go around, they look at your garage and they look at all the solvents and paints you have half open in your garage and go, well, that's part of the problem here. So it's great that someone can actually come to your house and do that. They look at fire hazard. You got flammable stuff propped up right against your hot water heater, not good. They'll go, hey, clear that away, get that, they'll mark that. Combustion safety test, that's what I just talked about. Hey, William. So, are you on that page? Okay, so the combustion safety, we won't go into it. You guys are not gonna be able to do this. But we may show you some on the weekend when we do building performance stuff. But it's because we have all these appliances, right? That exhaust to the outside, and what would those be? What? Stove? So range vent hood,
Old gas heaters. Old heaters.
yeah, furnaces, yeah, they go out, yeah,
Dryer.
dryer. I'm just talking about exhausting, so it might not be anything that's combusting. Yeah, the bathroom vents or any vents. So that's a bunch right there, right? So if they all go on at the same time, which is extremely possible, then what happens to your house?
The air pressure.
Yeah, all the air is sucked out of your house, right? So if you've got appliances in there that need air to burn, they're gonna suck air from wherever they can. And the quickest place in a hot water heater is where the air goes out. That's a streamline, so it sucks that air back in. And guess what that air hits on its way in? It hits the combustion chamber and the flame. You got air kind of pushes that flame right out across the space around your hot water heater. And if anything's flammable, there goes your house, it's up in flames. So combustion safety has never been paid much attention to, and most people are lucky that that doesn't happen more often. But this company's decided to make that part of their safety checklist, so that doesn't happen, and it's pretty extensive and complicated the way it's tested, but they use a blower door, they pressurize the house, they turn everything on, and they measure the pressure, and they can tell when something will back, what do you call it? When flame comes back in, backdraft, and they can tell when something will likely backdraft. Well, that's what you're aiming at, preventing spillage and backdraft. We talked about that earlier a little. Okay, there's a thing on lead, what lead measures, but it's the same thing we've been studying. Sustainable sites, water efficiency, energy and atmosphere, materials and resources, indoor environmental quality. Okay, awareness and education. We haven't talked about that. So would you say, this is a true or false question, would you say houses are more complex electronically today than they were 20 years ago?
True.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, just the safety things on the front porch, the huge addition, right? So when we have things like venting systems. Remember we talked about venting before? And we talked about using a kitchen range hood for all house vent, keep your minimum ventilation going. That has to be go 24/7. And it has to be a certain CFMs, right? Cubic feet per minute, and it has to be quiet. So say that person sells the house that did that. The new client comes in, doesn't like the looks of that range hood, buys a new one. That's a real cheap, crappy one. Makes a lot of noise, doesn't have a CFMs. They don't operate it 24/7, just when they cook. That house no longer has ventilation, full house ventilation. So how do we prevent something like that? That's not uncommon. Think about that. People sell houses all the time and just leave. Sometimes people sell houses and don't even meet the people that are coming in, right? So what happens to all that information? That's pretty valuable to global warming and to the non-toxicity of the house. Gets lost, right?
So you can pass on.
Yes, so we have a new problem on top of all that,
It's
the
actually
education problem.
It's actually happening with, well, a lot with, bathroom remodels.
Oh, okay,
Like there's companies that actually like guide you through the process of building it,
yeah,
and they'll be like, they will even send one of their inspectors to make sure that you do everything the way they tell you,
uh-huh,
and they'll give you warranty if you do everything, every step as they.
oh, yeah, and it voids the warranty if they don't do it.
And, the customer gets a copy, the contractor gets one, and they also keep one for themselves.
Okay, perfect. So that's not even a danger, right? That's just an aesthetic thing if they want it, if something,
Well, it's just for, like leaks or like a failure in a shower system.
yeah, huh? So that's great. So, there has to be a transfer of this information. That's what we're talking about, education. So that's actually a big, they eventually figured that out, and League's the only one that's actually put it into their checklist. But the local checklist, which we'll look at, also has that as a category, the education of the people who live in the house. There's so many new devices, and things. Air-to-air heat exchangers, a million new things we use, and if someone doesn't know how to use them, they don't use them. So they're just sitting there, and not all that goes to waste. So there's so many now that I think, of course, money is always the culprit that keeps this from happening, but I think every contractor should have a separate room in a house for information. It could be just a little 4x4 room, but it should be a place with a desk and shelves. And everything in the house that needs to be kept track of would be in there. All the contracts, if there are any, everything. It's getting to that point now, but they'll say, oh, we can't afford 4x4, 16 square feet. That's too much. They would tell you that. I know 80% of the contractors would say, we're not gonna put that in. We can't charge a customer another 16 square feet. So anyway, they get points for people who make some kind of effort to install a sequence of information. That's one of the great things about the internet is that information that we've accumulated over thousands of years is now on the internet. So at least we can go there and get it, right?
Oh, okay, yeah, no.
Hey, did you find that woman's place?
Yeah. You can
Thank
start Thursday. Right, okay.
Very nice.
Okay, so we have oh, we're still back on.
Oh.
Oh. We're still on that BPI checklist. No, we finished. Okay, now go to this one. So the second handout. So every certification program has a checklist. Why is that? I asked this question before. I think Manny got it, answered it before. Why does every certification need a checklist?
The standardizer,
To what?
with the standardize everything, right? Like.
Yeah, but why have a checklist? Why not just have information?
Both.
Who's doing the checklist?
The applicant?
Yes, the applicant that wants to get certified. So the certification company is providing certification, the status of your house, the document. You have to provide, you have to prove you've done all the things that warrants getting that certification. They just don't write it out for free. They want to make sure you're doing it. It's a contract. So everyone has a list. So this first page is the typical Energy Star, just part of the list, thermal enclosure system rating. So it's just an air sealing. Then the back, it's got more. All that stuff's filled out. When you hear the word third-party verification, that means that they don't trust the client. The client can answer a lot of these things and they don't care if they lie or not because they're not that big a deal. They're trusting them. But some of the things have to be some of the things have to be certified by an objective person. So you have to pay to have a third party come in and say, yes, they did install this and it does work. Yeah. So go to another building, building performance. Zach, do you have this? No. Are you looking at Danny's?
Wow.
So didn't I say earlier, if you guys don't have it, you should find someone who does?
You did, Mr. Foster. I did.
So there's several reasons why you should pay attention to me in class. One is it pisses me off and it hurts my feelings when you don't. And I don't tend to hold grudges, but it could affect your grades. I can't grade you directly on that, and it may give me a bad impression of you. Second, it's just learning how to be a civil human being. You don't have to like this class. It's not the kind of stuff you're used to learning about, but it's probably the most important class you'll take in college, learning about sustainability and bioregionalism. And I'm just sneaking it in because it does affect building, but it's also something you need to know. And it's just civil, it's just respect. Okay, you learn in your families respect for elders. I'm not saying that's me, even though I am an elder. Teachers, and the Hispanic community especially has respect for teachers. I've learned that through the years. They are so unbelievably adoring almost of teachers. It's really great. I love it. More than the white community. So those are all reasons why you guys need to pay attention, okay? And what you're substituting for attention is just 90% bullshit. If you're working out something for the next day at work, I can understand that. But usually it's just gossip and stuff, right? To keep you from getting bored. Well, another way to keep from getting bored is to ask questions or to contribute, like Manny did that thing about that contract. That was really interesting. It really supplemented what I was talking about. And all of you have stuff to add. I know that. You can't live a life from 20 to 30 years and not have a whole bunch of experiences that could contribute to these things. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. So on this one, we're going to just go through a few more of these, but hang in there. Combustion safety test, we talk about that, so skip that. Oh no, the first one is fuel delivery. What's that mean? What do you suspect that means, fuel delivery to a standard home?
Supply gas,
What?
supplying gas or?
Yeah, the supply of gas, yeah. It could be any kind of fuel, but and that can be natural gas through pipes, or it could be propane. A lot of people in more rural areas use propane a lot. It's not electricity, because that's, we don't worry about that so much. But we do worry about houses getting gas leaks and going up in flames. That happens occasionally. There was one in the Mesa about 3 years ago. Whole house went down because of a fuel problem. So that's pretty important. Natural gas has they add a smell to it. Methane doesn't have a smell for humans, but the gas company puts that smell you smell is an artificial smell just to warn you. So that's pretty good. Usually you can smell that, but not always. So these guys will come in and they'll go to every strategic place in a fuel line. The flex ducts, the connections, they know just where to go and they'll test all of it, which is a great thing to do. Combustion tests we talked about. CO testing. We talked about that being dangerous. That's a combustion product. What's the main way we test for CO?
That was like meters.
Carbon monoxide is what it stands for. Yeah, we have meters, we have devices. And those are mandatory now, right?
Yeah.
And I think if I don't know, anybody remodeled enough for the remodeling required CO? Sometimes when you remodel, the size of the remodel usually is what triggers it. But if it's a sizable size, you have to do everything, you have to bring everything up to grade. If it's a small remodel, they don't make you because it's a hassle. Probably carbon monoxide testers would be something they'd make you do if you had a remodel.
They don't let you buy a house without them.
Yeah, you can't buy a house, even a house already there.
Or rent a
No.
house.
Oh.
Yeah, you just do it, you rent
Well,
a
that's right, they have a whole code for that
Yeah,
too.
even to process a loan, they won't do it unless
Okay.
there's.
Oh, that's great. So some people will consider that a hassle, but when you consider that people die from CO poisoning and get really sick, it's actually a pretty good thing. Yeah, so that's what they do. They do all that kind of stuff. There's a thing 2 pages down on LEED. It shows you the kind of LEED educational programs they have and what subjects they teach and how long. It's not, LEED's got many levels of operation, but the minimal one, the education's not very involved at all. Pretty decent. It would be like 15 more hours of a class like this.
Don't they have like a certification?
You gotta really wanna do it, okay?
I think they have a certification.
All right, then Bill Green, that's our local one. We saw a film on that Saturday, for those of you who are here. Danny, you're the one whose dad knows Joe Campanelli, right?
Yeah.
But Joe was in this, he was one of the founders of Bill Green, so he was in that movie. I found the Trout Club house that he did. I found the video. It was in the wrong folder in a box that was in the wrong place. And something led me to it. And I found it and I tested it out, it still works. So I'll show you that probably later in the class. And you'll see Joe a lot in that. I did an educational thing at the end of that, but that version didn't have it, which is just as good. Because the filmer's got the camera right in your face. They just, some kind of photo technique, but. So this is a residential new construction handbook. So when you sign up for Bill Green, which is like a local lead, every local community has these. And Bill Green, you get a notebook like this when you sign up. You sign up before you build your house, right? And then it's got a checklist like. This is from that book. It's got a checklist, and we're gonna go over just real quickly the categories, same categories we've been studying. And so they have certain categories of certification and they involve points. And if you check off enough points, you get that certification. But the great thing about this program is that obviously this is not just a checklist, but for every item on a checklist, it has ideas for you, how you can satisfy that, and it has resources on where you can find people to do that. So it's really a great resource. Especially people who don't know anything about building. They move into the area, they say they've got money, they move in, and they go, yeah, we want to build a house here and we want it to be sustainable. We're concerned about the world. What would you suggest? And someone says, well, LEED's kind of involved, but if you do Bill Green, the local one, you get the same, help, and it'll cost less. So they could sign up and then they could go through this by themselves, the family, and then they could get together with a designer and a contractor and they could all talk about these various things and design a house that's sustainable. But this list, it's all the stuff we've been studying. Starts out with site in the water, protect sites' natural features, protect water quality, water protection. And then it's got energy efficiency is the next big section. Obviously, that's always big in that. That goes on, that's the 3 section, then health and indoor air quality. So look at that, it's on, I don't know what page it's on, go to section 4 in this handout. See where it says health and indoor air quality? So required, they put points and they also put what's required, so. Meet California state ventilation, we talked about there's a ventilation requirement, so that's required, you don't get points for that. But then avoid toxic cleaners, avoid environmentally friendly alternatives, use environment, that will get you 1 point. Require workers to use VOC safe masks. That's requiring your workers to do that, you would get a point for that. Obviously, they're gonna trust you for that, they're not gonna have someone stand outside your house and go, is he really wearing a mask? Take measures during construction operations to avoid moisture problems. That could be not using studs that have black mold on them, which we always used to do. It's probably not a good idea anymore. Take measures to avoid problems due to construction dust. Then material selection, low VOC carpets. We're going to talk more about materials next week. Moisture control. So all the kind of stuff we've been looking at for indoor air quality. And that's section 5 is material efficiency. Okay, all for that. So, we've got 1 or 2 YouTubes that aren't very long. I want to look at. Please, just one, yeah, get one so I can see what I'm doing. Need some sound.
There are many green building rating systems out there, but how good are they? And do they adequately address the challenges facing our planet from the looming climate crisis? In this video series, we're going to look at 10 of the most significant green building rating systems in the world. In this, part 1 of our series, we'll begin by looking at why we need sustainable buildings, how green building rating systems came about, and the 5 underlying foundations on which all rating systems address the aims of a sustainable building. I'm Darren, and this is ArchiNext. Buildings have a direct and indirect impact on human health and the natural environment. Energy, water, and natural resources are used, and waste and harmful emissions are produced during the construction, renovation, operation, and demolition of buildings. In the United States, buildings account for 41% of energy consumption, 40% of carbon dioxide emissions, 73% of electricity consumption, 14% of all drinkable water usage, and 40% of raw materials in their construction and operation. According to the United Nations 2019 Global Status Report for Buildings and Construction, building construction and operations accounted for the largest share of both global final energy use at 36% and energy-related carbon dioxide emissions at 39%. To put it bluntly, the architectural and building industries have contributed the most to the current global climate crisis. So how can these industries help to reduce, or more importantly, eliminate their impact on the environment? To understand why green building rating systems have developed, we must first look at what mechanisms are already in place to regulate the design, construction, and operation of buildings. Building codes exist around the world to meet minimum human health, safety, and welfare standards. These mandatory building codes are signed into law and vary widely from country to country and from city to city within a country. In some areas of the world, model building codes have been developed to minimize differences between neighboring jurisdictions. The International Code Council, or ICC, establishes model building codes called the I-codes, which are predominantly used in the United States. And the European Committee for Standardization establishes the Eurocodes predominantly used by countries in the European Union. As an example, the International Code Council updates its model building codes every 3 years, which are then adopted by most states in the US. However, most buildings only meet the minimum requirements of building codes. To put this another way, most buildings are the worst buildings that can be built without breaking the law, and little attention is given to eliminating the ongoing negative effects of a building to the natural environment. Voluntary green building rating systems try to fill the gap between mandatory building codes and designing and constructing a building that has the least impact on the natural environment. They not only consider a building's impact on its inhabitants and the natural environment, but also a building's ongoing operational footprint, educating a building's inhabitants, and some green rating systems even look into the social and equitable implications of a building. In an ideal world, the mandatory building codes would fully mitigate any environmental impact. However, building codes are far from addressing the full needs of the natural environment. The International Code Council has tried to address these concerns with the International Green Construction Code. However, the adoption of this code has been slow, and states or cities that do adopt it generally allow for voluntary participation. 2 green building standards have also been developed in the United States. The ICC ESHRE 700-2020 National Green Building Standard was first developed in 2008 for residential green building and received approval from the American National Standards Institute, or ANSI. Also, a collaboration between the American Institute of Architects, the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers, ASHRAE, the US Green Building Council, and the Illuminating Engineering Society produced Standard 189.1, Standard for the Design of High-Performance Green Buildings except Low-Rise Residential Buildings. The International Green Construction Code is powered by Standard 189.1. Green building rating systems began back in 1990 with the launch of Building Research Establishment's Environment Assessment Method, or BREEAM rating system in the United Kingdom. This was followed in 2000 by the US Green Building Council's Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, or LEED rating system. Over the past few decades, these and other green rating systems around the world have matured and developed into highly sophisticated blueprints on how to build sustainable, high-performance buildings that protect human health and the natural environment. Green building rating systems can vary in their approach to measuring a building's performance. Some are prescriptive-based and specify minimum or maximum values for various elements in construction. For example, minimum R values for insulation, efficiency of water heaters, or maximum air infiltration rates. In contrast, others are performance-based, where the desired outcome is modeled in computer software and compared to a baseline. There is a push towards outcome-based verification that measures the energy usage of the final occupied built project over a 12-month period to validate that a building meets the requirements of the rating system.
So for commercial buildings, they often do that. They'll give them a year trial. And if it doesn't correspond to what they projected it would do, then they have penalties for that. So they make them wait a whole year until it's finally approved.
Many of the other aspects of a building's performance, the local climate, solar access, shading, the form and orientation of a building on a site all have direct impacts on a building's energy, ventilation, and lighting needs. Most rating systems encourage construction on sites that are brownfields, sites that are contaminated that would enhance the natural environment through their environmental cleanup, grey fields, sites that have previously been developed with more than 20% impervious surfaces, and infill, vacant lots within previously built areas. All these types of sites restrict the spread of the built environment into the natural environment by preventing construction on greenfield sites, lands not previously developed, forests, protected natural areas, or near to wetlands where rainwater runoff from the built environment could adversely affect these delicate ecosystems. Number 2, water. Fresh water makes up just 2.5% of the water available on our planet, with an even smaller percentage accessible for human consumption. With the Earth's population growing and as water becomes more scarce, the ability to effectively use water becomes more incredibly important. Every rating system looks at how we can reduce water usage in a building's construction, operation, and its surrounding site. Alternatives to using drinking water to flush toilets and irrigate landscapes, such as on-site rainwater harvesting and closed-loop systems that recycle and reuse water, are recommended. Saving drinking water and reducing wastewater is synergistic with the building's site and location and with reducing energy. Number 3, energy. Energy efficiency and consumption are the main focus areas of all rating systems. By reducing energy consumption and generating on-site energy, a building can achieve a net zero or even net positive energy consumption. Eliminating a building's contribution to climate change has always been the primary focus of green building rating systems. A net zero or net positive energy building eliminates its operational carbon dioxide emissions into the atmosphere. The focus is always efficiency first, generation second. Number 4, materials. The type and amounts of materials used in construction can have huge impacts on the planet. Imagine a building in Miami being constructed from materials sourced from China. The amount of greenhouse gas emissions produced by transporting these materials halfway around the world from China to Miami would create a huge carbon footprint. This is what is called embodied energy, and we'll go into more depth about this in another video. Locally sourced and sustainable materials are a priority. The toxicity and off-gassing of materials also plays a considerable role. Some materials are banned outright for their polluting attributes or if they are known to cause damage to humans. Number 5, air. On average, humans spend about 90% of their time indoors. If the air that you are breathing inside is terrible, you will probably end up feeling not too good. Sick building syndrome is a well-documented phenomenon related to harmful indoor air environments and ill people. The focus of most rating systems is to have optimal indoor air quality and environments free of pollutants. Building codes are mandatory, whereas green building rating systems are voluntary. If building codes fully adopted environmentally sustainable requirements, then the landscape of construction would change significantly and quickly. However, this requires political will to make a change. Just like we only react to a pandemic once people start dying, it may be too late before we get to 100% environmentally sustainable design and construction. The architectural industry has the lead role and responsibility to design our way to a better future for our planet. If we make slow changes and are resistant to completely rethinking the role of architecture, we will remain part of the problem instead of emerging as part of the solution. It's our choice. We hold an obligation to design and lead the way to a completely sustainable future and save the only real home we have, planet Earth.
Okay, just one more thing, okay, then we'll go. Okay, there's a group called 3C Ren. And 3C stands for the Tri-County area, which is Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, and Ventura. So it serves that area, which is great. And quit what? Look at they say, are you sure you want to quit? Quit what?
Just say yes.
God. You know, sometimes you say yes and then quits the whole program. Okay. So this is just a quick slideshow, and I can throw it, it'll be quick. They do a bunch of stuff on energy savings and stuff. They're really great. They're a bunch of architects, contractors, volunteers that film these programs, you know, about the latest heat pump equipment, and it's really useful for local building. And I've been going to these, you know, they have seminars on the internet, on the, you know, you can do at home. But, okay, so this is something you need to know. The building code in California is called Title 24. That's an administrative designation from the state. Title 24, that's all there is. That's the building code. Cal Green is a part of that code that's been added. So some people think Cal Green, like Carol, she gets this mixed up. That Cal Green is something different, but it's not. There's, I don't know, there's like 10 or 8 categories in the building code, and they added Cal Green, a sustainability one. And they also changed the energy code, which was already a code. They just made it greener. So Cal Green's both those improvements. So you should know that when people are talking. This is the evolution. They had an energy code in 75, LEED 98. The Cal Green, they started adding sustainable stuff in 2009. Oh, okay, here's the Title 24. It's got 12 parts. The Cal Green building standards is part 11. They added to it. Then you've got fire code, historical building code, plumbing code, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. And then the energy code has always been there, but they improved it. They made it much more sustainable. So the code is divided into residential and non-residential, you know, commercial and community buildings. And they have the code. I don't know if anybody used the California Building Code recently. I don't know why you would, but they have what are called, they start each chapter with mandatory measures that everybody has to take no matter what kind of building you're in. And then they have measures for individual types of buildings, like residential under a certain amount or a certain occupancy. So this is, the code doesn't really have these slides in it, it's just boring words after another, but this group has made this slideshow, we won't go through the whole thing. Just illustrating some of these code requirements, but I just wanted to show you how it's parallels what we've been talking about. So to keep water on the site, sometimes you might have to use burlap mat on the sides of hills so the erosion doesn't go. Like after burns, they have a lot of that. Straw wattles, they put wattles sometimes in front of the storm drains if they think there's a toxic overflow of some kind. It'll at least filter through those. Mulch. Then they have good housekeeping for construction sites. Stormwater drainage, which is like we've been talking about. Rain garden, retention basins, we've looked at that. Swales or French drains, we've talked about those. Dry well cistern, saving the water from the roof to use in the garden. Then grading and paving. The big thing with paving has been, see all the concrete and asphalt, that retains a lot of heat. And we'd like, it actually reflects the heat, and then anybody above it like us gets blasted with heat. Green areas are much better that way. They're very cooling and they absorb the heat. So they're trying to do a lot of greening of parking lots. LA, there's lots going on in LA. Trying to get a lot of green mixed with that concrete. So, and even lots that aren't black concrete, but they're either DG, hard dirt and things, where it doesn't rain a lot because that would create mud. So they've been concerned about that. Bicycle parking, electric vehicle charging, this is. So if you have a building that has a lot of people, you're required to have so many stalls of parking that are electric vehicles. So that's the part of the code that doesn't concern us too much. Shade trees. Water efficiency, it's the same thing we learned when we went to Ferguson's, the various requirements for minimum flushing. That's all in that code. Recycled water supplies, telling you how to mark and get that. Rodent proofing, there's requirements for that. Weather protection, moisture control. Construction waste. 65% we're supposed to get rid of, they don't do it. This town sends it to Marburg. They have a bin that's 65% of what they've demolished. And they send 65% to Marburg, and that constitutes 65% recycling. When it gets to Marburg, they put it out on the floor and they only recycle a fraction of that. The rest goes to the dump. So it's a corrupt system, which I think they're not patrolling it because there's no alternative right now, and it would just make impossible for everybody. That's why Carol's trying to get this reuse thing going, so they can actually have a place to take reusables, which will reduce that, and it'll be easier to meet a 65%. So people don't consider it a problem now because it's a lie, it's a falsehood. They're not really doing that, but we're trying to get to that because our landfills are filling up. So there's a whole bunch of stuff on. Oh, here we go. Operation and maintenance manual, final inspection, homeowners manual, 10 subjects included. So this is the kind of thing that's a requirement now. You don't have to have a separate room, educate homeowner or maintenance staff, but you need documentation for various things. Recycling, what's required, commissioning, that's more for commercial buildings. Environmental quality, direct vent sealed combustion, it goes into your combustion options. Now, there's different kinds of stoves and different kinds of flues. Some are leaky and bring it back, and some are good. Then it talks about adhesives and VOCs. We talked about that. They're restricted. Carpet, it has to be approved by certain organizations, so it's not really toxic carpet. Resilient floor systems, composite wood products, pollutant control, vapor barriers and moisture and foundation, moisture content of buildings. If you have a frame and an inspector comes out and he has a little moisture meter, which is a pin that he sticks in the wood. If it's higher than 19%, you can't cover the building up. You can't finish until the sun comes out and dries the freaking building. I don't know what they do in a place like Seattle or Portland, you know, maybe you have to put something over it. And they do that here too, you know, that hospital in Santa Maria, that one at the end of Santa Maria, that big hospital, what's it called? It's got a religious name to it. That thing was, the whole thing was,
Marion.
yeah, what's the name, what's it called?
Marion?
Yeah, that whole thing was tented. I remember driving through there going, wow, just to do with, you know, fight the elements. It's expensive, but that's sometimes a choice. Bathroom exhaust fan, you know, indoor air moisture, indoor air quality. So it's all the stuff we've been talking about, and then they have volunteer tiers. So they have the mandatory stuff that you have to do, and then they have things you can do if you want. And usually what's in a number 2 tier is what's coming to be mandatory in the next code 5 years down the road. So even if you don't do these things, it's good to realize that they're going to be required in the future, so to sort of start working toward that. That's why they do it. So that's pretty much it, in a nutshell, what the code is. But it's been requiring a lot of the stuff we've been talking about. So it's in the code, you know. And yeah. So Saturday we're going to continue on this and look at there's a system they mentioned at the end of when they had all the programs lined up. The second to the end was called living building something.
Challenge.
Huh?
Challenge.
Thank you. Good ears. Living building challenge, and it's extensive. It's got a whole bunch of programs, and I want to show you that Saturday. And it's and I'll show you the guy who started it. They've got a YouTube of him on TED Talk or somewhere. Brilliant guy, and he's got the right attitude he's an architect, toward development and making houses. Since houses are such a big part of our life, he wants to make them contribute to stopping global warming and making the world a pleasant place. I mean, we put a lot of money into them, they create a lot of waste, and we live in them most of the time, and it's absolutely ridiculous that we don't make them better for us, you know. So he's really leading that push, and I think it's a really good movement, something to be aware of. So we'll talk about that Saturday. So I hate to say it, but you're dismissed and you can go home. Thanks for hanging in there. I know they're long. I realize that, you know, can't help it. All right, we'll see you guys. No hard feelings.
If you work Saturday? Okay, then Thursday I'll have your test for you.
Okay, perfect. I've been doing overtime on
Okay.
Saturdays because I get double.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Yeah.
We're actually gonna stop these Saturday classes, because people have to work, you know, think about it.
Yeah.
And so,
I work 6 days right now.
yeah, you know, when I was a carpenter for a good part of my life, I always worked Saturday, always,
Yeah,
sometimes Sunday.
I kind of just got used to it too.
Yeah.
A little carry on top of my paycheck.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean,
We're doing concrete right now too.
Oh. yeah,
Brutal.
yeah, no, you gotta do it, so I understand that.
Yeah.
All right, yeah.
Okay, good night.
All right, good night.
Do you guys know Landon?
No.
I don't know where he is. He wasn't tonight. He wasn't here last Thursday. Yeah, I was the one that, he was gonna, I gave him that to take home.
Oh, okay.
But he was gonna send it to me, email it to me over the weekend. I didn't get it even today, and then I emailed him Okay, and then he didn't answer, and I called him and his mail was storage is full. That's usually the case with students.
Yeah.
I think they fill it up to no one can get to that.
Probably.
But if you see him, I don't know if you see him in other class or whatever, but I wanna make sure he can stay on track. Behind. Yeah. All right,
Have a good evening.
yeah, you too, see you guys.
By the way, have you ever, are you interested in like super old ancient buildings or not?
Well, of course, my wife and I are going to Japan in May, and all we're gonna see is those temples and,
Oh, fun, but like,
I mean, everywhere,
have you heard about the temples of Göbekli Tepe?
yes. And I wanted to go there, I was planning a bucket list trip,
Yeah.
but first. Well, on the way to there was that earthquake zone that devastated Turkey, which doesn't mean you can go around it, but
Yeah,
that part of the world is so. I was gonna go to Greece and then to Asia Minor, where part of ancient Greece was on the Turkish coast. Go to Shoto Hayek, which is another site, old site,
Yeah.
and then to Göbekli Tepe.
Mhm.
But I don't know what I'm gonna do now. I may not be able to do it. Yeah, oh,
Yeah.
I'm really fascinated by those.
yeah,
That one is,
that one is crazy, right?
you know,
It's way too old.
Choto Hayek is a residential, it's big
Yeah.
and it's the first really huge, it's interesting. But Göbekli Tepe is a, they didn't even live there. It was
Right,
just
it's
a
like a
place where they
temple.
came from
Yeah.
around and got together and had these ceremonies, I guess.
Yeah, some
But-
people, like, there's some theories over that it was like a knowledge exchange there.
Yeah, maybe, huh?
Cause it was like, there was a lot of like hunter gatherers.
Yeah, mostly it's hunter
Yeah.
gatherers, they weren't even farmers yet.
Which, but the crazy thing is like Göbekli Tepe is so accurate, which is ridiculous for the time period. which-
Accurate.
Like how they built it.
Oh,
It's.
Well, and the
crazy.
sculpture is beautiful. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's really, and I'm going, that's really far back for that kind of sophistication.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
yeah,
it's, there's probably a dozen sites like that around, right?
Yeah.
In that area,
yeah,
northern Iraq and all that, they don't have, those countries don't have the money to excavate that
Yeah.
fast.
There's a very interesting show on Netflix. Have you heard about Ancient Apocalypse?
The what?
It's called Ancient Apocalypse.
No,
It's basically.
I look at all those shows. I love those shows.
Yeah, but but basically it's a theory which is getting